Hello everybody, I have just come on to talk to you a little bit about brioche. I'm currently working on a brioche project and I know that a lot of people struggle with brioche. So I just want to explain some tips and tricks where brioche is concerned and hopefully help you understand how it works a little bit more. The only way I can do that is to show you some brioche knitting. So although it's not a tutorial, it will hopefully by the end of this video, you will get your head around brioche a little bit more. So brioche is reversible knitting. So you can see on one side, this is 2-colour brioche. It can also be done in 1 colour, but I'm just showing 2 colour. You can see on this side, this is the right side of my work, that the pink colour is prominent. I do have 2 yarns attached, and on the other side of the work here you can see the green colour is prominent, and that is because brioche is a form of double knitting. So the way brioche works, it's just knitting and purling. The stitches are known as brioche knit and brioche purl. So for example, looking at the right side of this work, you can see that the knit stitch here, you can see these are all knit stitches, and these are in the pink colour. Now I'm using the pink yarn first, so they're the stitches that I'm going to be knitting. The green ones, the ones in the middle, I'm going to be slipping, and that's all brioche is. It's knitting and slipping stitches on one side, purling and slipping stitches on the other side. Because it's a form of double knitting, you work one side in 1 colour, then the same side in a 2nd colour. It's tricky to explain without just showing you, so I'm hoping by just showing you, you're going to be able to understand. When you first start a brioche pattern, it always looks a little bit funky at the beginning, so you do need to follow the pattern really carefully. But as it starts to develop, it becomes really easy to see and to get your head around. So you are always either knitting a stitch and slipping a stitch, or you are purling a stitch and slipping a stitch every single time. So on this right side, my pink is the prominent colour, so I'll be knitting stitches with the pink and slipping the green ones. And then on the same side, I will be purling stitches with the green and slipping the pink ones. You'll see as I show you, you will always knit a stitch, slip a stitch, or purl a stitch, slip a stitch. Now, the other thing that you have to remember with brioche is when you slip a stitch, it always has to have a friend. So you'll come across a stitch, it'll be all on its own, and you need to give it a friend. So just remember those few little tips there. So I am using my pink yarn and I'm on the right side of my work. Now you can see I've got 2 stitches here. A brioche knit stitch and a brioche purl stitch will always have 2 colours, always. So you can see this one here is a brioche knit stitch and there's a pink and a green, and I've got this little green one by itself, that's a purl stitch. Whenever you slip a stitch, you always start with yarn in front. That's not a purl stitch, sorry, that's a slip stitch. You always start with the yarn in the front as you slip a stitch, because what you're going to do is you're going to create a friend to go with it. So I'm going to slip that stitch. Now my next one is a brioche knit, so it needs a yarn over. If it was a purl, I'd pull the yarn over all the way around, but this is a knit stitch. So when you want to create a yarn over with a knit stitch, you just have the yarn in the front like you would with any other knitting, and as you do the knit stitch, it will create the yarn over. So I've slipped my stitch with the yarn in the front. I need a yarn over to give that one a friend. So as I do my next knit stitch, I'll be catching both of the loops and knitting that, and that creates the yarn over on that one. So you can see I'm just knitting the knits and slipping the purls. Yeah, I know that that's what I need to do because the knit stitches on this are in pink and I'm using pink. So I knit the knit stitches and slip the pearls. So the next one would be a purl stitch, so yarn to the front and slip that. The next one is a knit stitch and it's got 2 colours attached. It will always have 2 colours if you are brioche knit or brioche purl. I never think of it as brioche knit or brioche purl. I always just think of knit or purl, it's easier. Yarn in the front, slip the next stitch because it's a purl. There's my knit stitch there, so that's a knit stitch. Yarn in the front because the next one's going to be slipping. Knit stitch, it will always have 2 stitches. Yarn in the front, slip the next one. We're not working with that green colour, we're only working with the pink. Knit the next one. You see I've got 2 loops there. Yarn to the front, slip the purl, knit the next stitch, slip the purl. You can see, so I know my next one's a knit stitch because that's what this is the knit stitch. So I'm just ignoring, when I come to that purl, I'm just ignoring it. I just need to make sure I remember to have the yarn in front because that's what creates the yarn over. So yarn in the front, slip the purl stitch. We're not interested in that, we're only interested in the knit stitch. And knit the next one. Had my yarn tangled there. Slip the next stitch. Knit the next one, yarn to the front, slip the purl. There's my next one, it's a knit stitch, so we're just going to knit it. You notice I'm not saying brioche knit or brioche purl, it's not how I think of it. Slip the purl, knit the next stitch, slip the purl. We're only interested in this knit stitch, that's the only one we're knitting. If it's not a knit stitch, we're slipping it over with a friend. So there's the friend, the yarn over. And you're always, a brioche knit and a brioche purl always has 2 strands, always. Slip the purl, knit the knit, slip the purl, knit the knit, slip the purl, knit the knit. Now if it comes like this where you've got these 3 strands and you're thinking, oh no, which is which, the knit stitch always has a friend with it because that's the brioche knit stitch. So if it's a brioche knit or a brioche purl, it's always got a yarn over friend attached to it. So this one here hasn't, this is the purl stitch, so we're slipping that with the yarn over. Knit the next stitch, slip the next one, knit the next stitch, oops, slip the next one, knit the next stitch, slip the next one, knit the next stitch, slip the next one, and knit the last stitch. Now I need to slip my last stitch for my pattern, so I'm just going to do that. So now I've got to the end of that row using the pink colour. So then you slide your stitches all the way over again. So I'm still staying with the right side. Now in the second colour, I'm going to be slipping my first stitch because now I'm using the green. So all I'm concentrating on now are these purl stitches. That's all, I'm ignoring these knit stitches now. So now the knit ones become the slip stitch. I'm using the green yarn, so I want to concentrate on the green stitches, which are these purl ones here. So I'm not looking at my pattern, I'm reading my knitting. So just by reading my knitting, I know to slip my first stitch. Now this second stitch is, can you see, it's part of that knit stitch column and it's pink and I'm using green, so I'm not interested in that. I want to slip it. yarn to the front. You always slip any stitches in brioche with your yarn at the front. Slip the stitch. Now the next stitch of brioche purl, so I need to complete that yarn over. So I've given that slip stitch a friend, and my next stitch is a brioche purl. You can see again that there are two colours linked to it. Anytime you brioche knit or brioche purl, you are always doing it through two colours. So I want this purl stitch, so I will purl that one. I'm not interested in this knit stitch now. We're using a different colour. I don't want to work the pink, I want to work the green. So my yarn's already in the front. Slip the stitch and do the yarn over. And the next one is a brioche purl. That's the bit we're doing this time, this purl section here. Now I'm on a knit stitch again. That's the pink one. I'm not interested in the pink yarn. I'm using the green yarn. I don't want the pink. So slip that one with the yarn over and purl. I know I'm purling because that's a purl stitch, so I know that's what I'm doing. I'm reading my knitting. There we go, we've got another knit stitch there. So I want to slip that with the yarn over, give it a friend, and purl the next one. That's the one I'm interested in. I want to ignore this pink one and purl the next one. We're only interested on this side in this section here. We're using the green yarn, so they're the stitches that we're knitting. So that's a pink stitch, ignore that one, yarn over. So whenever you slip, you always do a yarn over and purl the next stitch. Slip the knit one and then brioche purl that one. That's a knit stitch, so slip that one, give it a friend, and purl the next one. That's a knit stitch, slip that one and give it a friend, and purl the next one. Again, we've come across a knit stitch, so slip that and yarn over, it needs a friend, and purl the next one. So that's all brioche is. You just need to be aware of which colour you're using. So if I'm using green, I'm only interested in the green stitches. If I'm using pink, I'm only interested in the pink stitches. So it's learning to differentiate which one you're knitting. So that's that one's had a yarn over, so that's a brioche purl. Again, we're not interested in the slip stitch, ignore that one. And brioche purl. If you brioche knit or brioche purl, you always do it through two loops. Slip that one, give it a friend, and purl the next. Slip the knit stitch, give it a friend, and purl the next. Slip the knit stitch, give it a friend, and purl the next. Slip the knit stitch, give it a friend, and purl the next. Slip the knit stitch, give it a friend, and purl the next. Slip the knit stitch, give it a friend, and purl the next. Slip the knit stitch, give it a friend, and purl the next. Once you understand that aspect of brioche, it becomes so much easier, because it's always easier to do something if you understand what you're doing. Coming up to the end of this row now. So I know my last one is a knit stitch, so slip it, yarn over, and I slip my last stitch anyway. So what happens then when you turn the work over? So now this is what the work looks like. And now I'm on the green side. So you can see now the green is the knit stitch and the pink is now the purl stitch. So I'm on the wrong side. I still start with the same colour. My yarn A is my first colour, my yarn B is my second. So by reading my knitting, I've not looked at my pattern because I'm just reading what my knitting says. I will knit my first stitch. In my yarn A, I always knit my first stitch. Now, here's my knit stitch here, that's in the green. So this one is a purl stitch. So I would purl that one. Give that a slight tug. My knit stitch is the green one. I'm using pink, so I want to ignore that one. So slip that and yarn over. Whoops. And I purl the next one. That's a knit stitch, so slip that, yarn over. See, I'm purling. This is the one I'm looking at because I'm using the pink. I'm looking at this section here, which is a purl. So I purl the next one. Slip that one and give it a yarn over. That's a knit stitch. I'm not interested in that. And I purl the next one. So again, this is a knit stitch. Slip that, yarn over, purl the next. Slip the knit stitch, yarn over, give it a friend, and purl the next. Slip the knit stitch, yarn over, so it's got a friend, purl the next. Slip the knit stitch, yarn over, and purl the next. And you see, so with the pink yarn, that's the pink colour here, that's what I'm looking at, which is just purling. So I'm going to do that all the way across. Slip in the knit stitch. I'm not interested. That knit stitch is in green and I'm using pink. So I'm not interested in that one. I'm interested in the stitch with the colour of the yarn that I'm working with. All the way across. Slip that one and purl the next one. So I'm still, when I'm doing the purl, I'm going through 2 loops like you always do. If you're doing a brioche knit or a brioche purl, you always go through 2 colours, and the next one always has to have a friend. All the way across, and then I will show you what we do on the wrong side with the green. So like, can you see that's tangled over a little bit on that stitch? You can just wiggle them so you've got them prominent. So I can see that's the knit stitch, this is the brioche purl here. So slip the knit stitch, brioche purl, slip the knit stitch. My last one is a brioche purl and I slip my last stitch. So slide all your stitches over. Now, same side, we're looking at the green. So I'm using my green yarn now. So the green is the knit stitch. So I'm going to be doing a brioche knit with the green yarn. So I slip my first one because the first one is the pink colour. Now, here's the brioche knit here. That's the one that I want to work in because that's the prominent colour. So this is a purl stitch in the pink. Can you see that? So I want to slip that one. So always have your yarn in the front and slip that stitch. I need to create a yarn over, but that'll happen automatically as I knit this next stitch. So that one is a brioche knit. Yarn to the front. I'm not interested in the purl is pink, so I slip that, my yarn's at the front, and my next one, the green one, is the one I'm concentrating on because I'm using green yarn. So that's a knit stitch, yarn to the front, slip the purl out of the way. We're not interested in that, we're only interested in this knit stitch. Knit the knit, slip the purl, knit the knit. You see that one's crossed over a little bit, you just separate it with your finger. Slip the purl, knit the knit, slip the pearl. Always make sure you slip with that yarn in the front. Every time, you never slip without the yarn in the front. Next one's a pearl, we don't want that, we want the knit stitch in the green. Yarn over, slip the stitch, knit, slip the next one. There's our knit stitch, we'll have that one, that's what we're interested in. Not interested in that one, we want that one. So it's always knit slip or pearl slip every time. Work one stitch, slip the next one. Work one stitch, slip the next one every time. So it's not as complicated as what it seems once you understand the stitches that you're working. Slip that one, knit the next stitch, slip that one, knit the next stitch, slip the pearl, knit the knit, slip the pearl, knit the knit, slip the pearl, knit the knit. There we go. So on this last one I slip the pearl, but I need to pull the yarn all the way around because my last stitch is a slip one. So I need to make sure I complete that yarn over. And that's basically it with brioche. It's just understanding the colour that you're working with. So if you're working with the pink yarn, then you are working on this stitch only. You only want the pink stitches. The other ones you're not interested in. I really hope that made sense to some people. Brioche seems much trickier than it is, and all it is working a stitch and slipping a stitch. That's all. It takes a little bit longer because you're working each row twice, but it is only knitting and slipping or purling and slipping. So I really hope that's been helpful to somebody. See you next time.